This is CBC Here and Now.
When we looked at his hand, we had seen that there was a puncture wound, obviously, and the tips of his finger had some dry blood on the ends.
And I fell and I fixed my hand in one and I saw it was in my hand, that's why I had to whip it out.
He was pricked by a dirty needle after he fell when he was playing, and now she's wondering who put them there, and she's warning other parents.
Oh, we had huge safety concerns. Our truck was not even roadworthy anymore. We started applying for a new truck, to no avail.
So the town launched a fundraiser to raise money to replace their fire truck, and now Chase the Ace fever has hit Little Bay. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain. We have those stories, but first we start with breaking news. A Newfoundland and Labrador cabinet minister is in hot water tonight. A voicemail message has captured Perry Trimper describing the Innu Nation in a less than flattering light. Our breaking story, and she joins me live from our newsroom. So Chris, what's this all about?
Well, Anthony, this is a conversation made available to us by the Innu Nation. Apparently, yesterday, Minister Perry Trimper had a conversation with Dominic Rich of the Innu Nation, and the conversation was about the fact that the Innu wanted translation service for motor vehicle registration and driver's tests so that they could pass those tests. It appears that Perry Trimper thought he had hung up from that conversation, but he didn't. And what happened was that several minutes of a recorded conversation he had with an unnamed, unknown woman in his presence made it onto the voicemail of Dominic Rich. And that has been made public and given to us. And it does contain, you could say, unflattering. There are other words that the Innu are using to describe this, some unflattering descriptions of the Innu and Mr. Trimper's opinion on what dealing with them is like. Let's have a look at one of those quotes, or have a listen.
All right, so obviously we're waiting for some of that. Maybe, Chris, be interesting to sort of talk about the fact that this is something that Mr. Trimper didn't mean to necessarily leave there, and now the Innu Nation has basically made a decision to put it out there for people to hear.
And they have. And so a conversation then ensued between Mr. Trimper and someone in his office, and they used words such as playing the race card and entitlement. And those are the words that the Innu are objecting to. I've spoken with a representative of the Innu Nation this afternoon, and we've also spoken to Dominic Rich. He says this amounts to betrayal. It goes to the heart and the core of what it feels like to be Innu, and he uses the word racism to describe how this makes him feel. Now, we have contacted Minister Trimper, who had asked for a little bit of time to get back to us. I just spoke to him just moments ago, and he's arrived in our CBC studios, and we'll hear from him shortly. He did tell me that he had a sense from a phone call that he'd made that he hadn't exactly hung up, and some of it was recorded. He says he wants to be able to address the contents of that recorded message on Dominic Rich's phone.
All right, and I should point out, obviously, it was a breaking story just before we went to air, so we're having taken a bit of time to get the audio to you. We'll get that on the program tonight. Pretty sure we will. Might have to wait a bit. But I guess the other important context for this, Chris, is that it was just last week, Premier Dwight Ball had a cabinet shuffle, brought Perry Trimper back in. I was at the swearing in, and the Premier made it very clear he wanted Mr. Trimper back because he was somebody who was competent and somebody who trusted him in the portfolio of environment, municipalities, and the environment. So it's
exactly.
Pretty sudden.
It is very sudden, and they are very close. The Premier and Minister Trimper are very close. I've heard from the Premier's office just moments ago. We're expecting to have a statement from them. So if our listeners will forgive us, all of this is unfolding rather quickly, and we'll have updates throughout the show. But yes, Mr. Trimper was put back in cabinet. He was the Speaker for quite some time. He was promoted or transferred to the position of Municipal Affairs and Environment, and he is the Minister for Labrador. And it is quite a vote of confidence for the Premier to take Mr. Trimper and to basically tell him he needed him in government. So we're waiting to hear from the Premier's office, and Mr. Trimper is standing by to speak with us, and we'll have those quotes as well as the show goes on.
All right, Chris, appreciate that. That's Chris O'Neill Yates in our newsroom. You can check out more on our website right now, cbc.ca. Well, it's a subject that keeps residents, especially parents, on pins and needles. Carelessly discarded syringes. Tonight, a St. John's family has found out just how dangerous a discarded needle can be. Terry Roberts now with that story.
This might look like a heartwarming mother-son moment, but it's anything but. Some after-school playtime turned into a horrifying ordeal Wednesday, followed by a trip to the hospital for this 8-year-old.
A syringe hit my hand, and then these two, I felt like they were hit because they had dry blood on them.
Caleb Galindez and his friends were walking on a trail between Neptune Road and Diana Road near the Avalon Mall in St. John's when this happened.
I was playing with my friends. We were down there, we saw some syringes. We didn't touch them because someone said do not touch them. We didn't touch them. And I fell and I fixed my hand in one and I saw it was in my hand, that's why I had to whip it out and then put it down on the ground.
24 hours later, the needles are still visible on the trail, traces of blood noticeable on one.
When my son came home, the panic that he had was insane, and you could see and clearly see that he had been stuck.
A tiny hand, a scary wound.
I hardly slept last night because all we were thinking about was that, and it's been nerve-wracking, and all I can worry about is he going to be okay? Is there a chance that he could get some serious illness like HIV or hepatitis or anything at all?
Sarah Smith says discarded needles are common in her neighborhood, and now her son is paying the price.
They said that his blood work will have to be done every 6 weeks for 6 months, or every month, it depends, and that he'll have to follow up with antivirals. Yesterday he was upset, he was crying. He had 2 panic attacks in the day where he could hardly breathe. He told me that it felt like his throat was closing over, so he was really terrified. He didn't take it very well.
Today, Caleb is more calm, more curious than concerned, but he's not happy with those who ditched the dirty needles.
Very bad people. Like very, very bad people.
I just think they should really think what they're doing and stop being so selfish. And they don't know who they're going to hurt. They don't know. Somebody could die. I mean, you never know what could be in these needles or what kind of infections they could carry.
Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
Aware of the needles and has sent a crew to clean up the area. Meanwhile, the city urges anyone who finds discarded needles to keep at a safe distance. They should call Access St. John's at 311 and to provide as much detail as possible about the location where you might find them. Now, we spoke with Mayor Danny Breen late this afternoon, and he described the needle situation as a major problem. All right, the jackpot is building, and so are the chances that Little Bay will get a new fire truck. The Green Bay community started a Chase the Ace fundraiser back in November to get money to replace the aging truck after the provincial government rejected their funding request. So now there are just 8 cards left, and so far the town has raised $100,000 for their new truck. Here now's Katie Breen is in Little Bay this evening.
Little Bay is a small town with a big fire hall. There's about 100 people in the community, but the fire department serves about 500 people in the surrounding area. For years, volunteers fought fires with a 1983 Chevy pickup truck, but it was getting old.
We had one firefighter who said, if we can't get a new truck, I'm off the fire department until we get a new truck. And he's still sitting off the fire department until we get the truck.
The old truck was swerving all over the place. The community applied to government for a new one. According to the mayor, the province told them they needed a bigger garage. So between free labor and other fundraisers, they built this. But the truck didn't follow.
It's heart-wrenching. Like to see those fire department members putting it all out there and we're not getting what they promised us, it is heart-wrenching.
So Little Bay turned to gambling to try and get a pumper. Week over week, more people came out trying to chase the ace. Now the jackpot is near $40,000. They've raised enough to come up with a community share of the truck, but in the meantime, they've taken the old Chevy off the road.
To me, we're in dire straits. We need a rural response unit with water, because we are towns with, well, we only got one hydrant. Beachside has a few. Coffee Cove has none. St. Patrick's has none. So we need a water in our truck.
About 1,000 people came out last week to try and chase the ace. That's 10 times more than the number of people living in the community, and they're hoping they'll get that same number out again tonight. Katie Breen, CBC News, Little Bay.
Well, from one Little Bay to another, in the new year, the Notre Dame outport of Little Bay Islands is going to look quite a bit different. And that's because the town has agreed to relocate by December the 31st. Services will stop shortly thereafter. Now, the government has pledged $8.7 million to the project. And that means single people will receive $250,000 to move, while families can receive up to $270,000. After years of failed attempts, all 54 residents voted unanimously to relocate. The province estimates this resettlement will save $20 million over the next 20 years. A 63-year-old man from Harbour Round has died after a workplace accident at the government wharf in Mings Bight. The RCMP says the man was seriously hurt in an accident yesterday afternoon. Happened at around 1 o'clock, and the man died at the scene. Occupational Health and Safety is assisting the RCMP with its investigation.
Is Lester's farm too big for the St. John's Farmers Market? This weekend, Lester's is being allowed back in after being kicked out over concerns from some smaller farmers. The details coming up.
Chilly for some of us today, barely reaching the double digits in Gander, 10 degrees, 9 in Twillingate. Some cool temperatures as well up through Cartwright. Reached a high near 15 degrees for St. John's, but if we take a look at those current temperatures, down to 10, and we can thank that northerly flow for that. That's going to continue as we head through the night tonight. Along with that, we're also looking at some drizzle, but as we head through the next couple of days, it does get a little bit better. We'll feel a little fall-like, but plenty of sunshine. We'll have all the details coming up.
After going to court, CBC Investigates is able tonight to tell you more about potential fraud at the province's English School District. Well, it's been a year since the Auditor General issued a damning report. You might remember that taxpayers forked out $735 to rent a wheelbarrow for a couple of weeks. Well, that's just the start of some bizarre purchases. After the Auditor General's report came out, the RNC was called in. So we went to court to get police search warrant documents unsealed, and there is evidence of quote fixing or vendor collusion, and lots of items that were bought with tax dollars that are missing. 10 times between 2012 and 2014, tires were bought for cars that weren't owned by the school board. And one set of tires cost nearly $1,000. And those tires were for a luxury European SUV. Now, police believe that some of these tires may have been found in a shipping container on some private property, and the container, well, even that was paid for by taxpayers. But wait, there's even more. Missing generators, missing jet pumps, missing fencing. $170,000 worth of items bought with taxpayers' money, nowhere to be found. Snow blowers, motorized blinds for a high school, a vanity light fixture, a bicycle rack, even a faucet and a shower head paid for. But just where is all this stuff? Well, our CBC Investigates producer, Rob Ansell, joins us now. So obviously you've discovered some interesting things, tells us a lot, but what is it that we don't know?
Well, we don't know who the main suspect is, their name, and the companies that may be involved in this. That's still off limits by order of the judge. Also, these documents are 6 months old. It took a while to get them through the court process, so presumably the investigation has been ongoing since then. But the RNC didn't respond when I asked what the current status is now.
Okay, so Rob, so that's the criminal side of this. What about the school board? What's going to happen to make sure this kind of stuff doesn't happen again?
Well, officials say they've made some changes, like a whistleblower policy and ethics training. But the big ticket item is a new financial system. It also carries a big price tag, a couple of $1,000,000 a year to start, then $1 million a year after that. So the province is still reviewing that request. And it's also worth noting that the House of Assembly spending watchdog may also have another look at this. The Public Accounts Committee had a hearing just before Christmas. They didn't get all the answers they wanted, and they're going to decide next month whether they're going to go for round 2 with officials from the school board. Okay, fair bit of scrutiny from them and from you. Appreciate that. Great story. Thanks, Rob. Thank you. Now, you can get more about this story, our CBC Investigate story, on our website, cbc.ca/NL. Well, according to police, somebody deliberately set fire to the wooded area behind the Health Sciences Centre in St. John's. Those fires broke out last Tuesday afternoon near Mount Sile Road and took crews hours to contain. A water bomber, you see there, as well as helicopter, had to tackle the flames from the air.
The RNC says its fire investigators are leading the investigation, and anyone who may have seen something suspicious on the Mount Scio Long Pond Trail that day are asked to get in touch with the police. The RNC is looking for a man allegedly involved in a daytime sexual assault at the Mundy Pond Dog Park. Police say the incident occurred at 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and the complainant provided police with a very detailed description. Police say he is a man in his 40s or 50s, standing 5 feet and 7 or 8 inches tall, weighing between 140 and 150 pounds. He's reported to have short hair with sideburns, as well as a toonie-sized spacer in his left ear. The complainant also said that the man was wearing eyeglasses, a black baseball hat, beige sneaker boots, light blue jeans, as well as a white or gray hoodie with writing on the front. Well, is Lester's farm too big for the St. John's Farmers Market? This fall, Lester's is being allowed back in after being kicked out last year. This over concerns from some smaller farmers, but a letter leaked to CBC indicates that political pressure may have helped the board at the farmers market change its mind. Here now, Zach Gowdy reports.
As the biggest and most established family farm around, Lester's farm operates its own market, and today, like most days, it's busy. But behind the scenes, Lester's has been in a year-long dispute with the St. John's Farmers Market.
Leading up to 2018 and start off the year, we were told we could have a spot there as we were a returning vendor. We had participated in the old farmers market as well. Unfortunately, once we got there for the first time in early August, that was our one and only time there. We were not allowed back after that.
Lester says the St. John's Farmers Market told them, effectively, they were too big and too much competition for the smaller farms. But having been promised a space, Lester's already had a crop in the ground.
We were scrambling. We were losing our produce. We need a place to sell. At the time when they were throwing different reasons at us, we were not overly satisfied with it. We did contact our councillor. We are a resident of St. John's. Our business pays taxes in St. John's, and we thought we had a right to be there.
Now, with a new season and a new board of directors, the farmers market has changed its mind. In a letter sent to farmers who operate at the market, board member Evan Murray explains that Lester's will be allowed limited access on Sunday mornings only. I understand that some of you still have concerns about this, Murray writes, but there has been political pressure applied to see Lester's attend. Murray says the board was contacted by an assistant deputy minister in the provincial government. The board is seeking to find a compromise here with the Lesters that will satisfy them and their political supporters. Chris Lester says he doesn't want to compete with the little guy and says the farmers market should give priority to smaller vendors. But outside of peak harvest season, the farmers section at the farmers market isn't crowded.
I still think that ourselves and other established farmers could help fill the void. There's no reason why all these new farmers can eventually end up carrying the selection that we do and having the season that we do. And until then, why would they not ask us to go down there and fill the gaps there?
Lester hopes that being at the Sunday farmers market will bring out more customers, benefiting everyone who sells there. Zach Gowdy, CBC News, St. John's.
Breaking news, our top story tonight, a new cabinet minister, questions being raised about a conversation caught on tape and some questionable remarks. The Premier apologizing to the Grand Chief of the Innu Nation. We have that story coming up. Mr. Trimper has been gracious enough to come to our studios. We'll ask him just what happened. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Here and Now. Our top story, Environment Minister Perry Trimper caught on tape describing the Innu as having played the race card. Trimper is heard on the recording discussing the Innu Nation with an unidentified woman who calls the group entitled. Here's part of that recording.
They certainly don't think the same way we do. Well, they have a feeling of entitlement. Yeah, and the race card comes up all the time. Oh, man, don't play that on me. I've been 32 years working with you guys. Don't play that on me. We're waiting for the Innu inquiry.
All right, so Perry Trimper has been good enough to join us live, and he's joined us now in the Here and Now studio. So, Mr. Trimper, how do you explain that when you say they play the race card, even the tone?
If I may, Anthony, I think the first thing I'd like to do is apologize. I'd like to apologize to Mr. Rich. I'd like to apologize to the Innu of Labrador and to the people of Lake Melville. Those comments, it's not the Perry Trimper that I work hard at, and I've drifted away from that. I was engaged in a conversation that was emotional, it was far-reaching, and when Chris called me just a few minutes ago, Chris O'Neill Yates, I realized I've got a new iPhone, and I said, oh my gosh, what did I just say in that animated conversation? Regardless of whether it was recorded or not,
right?
I shouldn't have said it. It's not what I've worked at for so long. It's not who I believe I am and the people that I believe in.
Because some people watching might think, actually, we just saw or heard the real Perry Trimper.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's not the case. I've worked closely, frankly, with the Innu for some 32 years now. Relocation at Davis Inlet. I've worked, helped set up 2 Innu companies. I've had several Innu working with me. Enjoy close friendships with many of them. Mm-hmm. I guess by way of explanation for the context of my remarks, it's the frustration of the fiscal challenges that we have as a government. I'm back in a cabinet portfolio and looking at financial pressures, and then looking at the need for services, whether it be for the Innu or anybody else.
In that conversation, though, it sounds like more like frustration with the Innu Nation itself, right? It's they play the race card. It's not we don't have enough money. It's they play the race card.
Well, it's just, you know, there are on occasion, you know, the accusation that I've somehow I don't support the Innu and so on, and that's what my context for the remarks, the 32 years was. Folks, I've got 32 years demonstrating my commitment to these people. So please don't accuse me of being racist. That was the context for that.
Now, the conversation is far-ranging. There is another remark, which I think may raise questions. It does not have to do with playing the race card, but it does have to do with rural Newfoundland. So let's take another listen to a different part of the conversation, which was recorded, and in fairness to you, without your knowledge that it was being left as a recording. Let's give this a listen.
So they're trying to say it's because of our inability to provide translators that they're not passing these tests. But in fact, it's be all matter of maybe you didn't study. Well, you know, can't have it all in every language. There's got to be an easier way than providing. It's not God-given right for us to provide services. That's what hurts when you got to translate all of that information. They won't read it. They won't read it. It'd be easier. It's like the ferries. It'd be better to have a helicopter on standby to move people to these communities than to operate some of this stuff. Yeah, it's crazy.
You are the new Minister of Municipalities. You think of a community like St. Brendan's, and they all watch Here and Now, and you're saying a chopper be better than ferries. Is that where you stand?
The point that I was making is that the services that we provide in this province are extensive. And extremely expensive. And in my demonstration for the need to provide translating services, or the matter that Mr. Rich and I have been working on, it again is a huge additional cost to do it. Obviously, we are doing that and so on. It's just the challenge of trying to meet people's expectations.
But on the ferries, it'd be better to have a lot of people in the province would agree with you.
Well, in fact, well, yeah, Anthony, absolutely. I mean, we have certain ferry locations, and we're getting off topic, but to explain that point.
Well, we're not, because you said it'd be better to have helicopters in the ferries we have, and a lot of people think we wouldn't be in the spending hole we are if we weren't funding ferries we can't really
Well,
afford.
If you look at some of the communities that we are providing ferry services, and you look at the total number of people moved from the mainland part of Newfoundland, for example, to some of these locations, it would be cheaper to provide helicopter service. That was my context.
Okay, well, I appreciate the bluntness. I want to wind down the interview.
Sure.
I appreciate you coming. The Premier's office put out a statement. The Premier says, spoke to Grand Chief Rich and apologized for what has happened. In no way does Minister Trimper's comments reflect the views of Premier Ball or that of the government of Newfoundland and Labrador. We value the relationship, and he's seeking a conversation. Are you going to have to resign? You're a minister from Labrador. Indigenous affairs are very sensitive. You've talked about playing the race card, the tone of the call. Can you survive this, or are you going to have to quit?
Well, again, I think the most important thing, first of all, Anthony, is to apologize, which is what I wanted to do. And I thank CBC and I thank you for the opportunity to be here to do that. I feel I've made a mistake. And as I said, I've drifted away from who I value in myself. And the best thing to do is to come clean. And whether it was recorded or not, I shouldn't have said those words.
Right. Can you rebuild trust?
I'll work on it. It'll really be up to the people that know me and the people that have, have witnessed this today. I do apologize to them one more time.
A rough first week back in Cabinet. I do appreciate you being gracious enough to come and face some of the tough questions about this. Thank you very much.
Shenes Kumitin. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it's taken a while to get to the weather tonight because of all the breaking news this evening, but the weather, very important. But first, most viewers know that Ashley moved here from the north.
Yes.
But did you know or realize that you'd moved to a tropical paradise?
Nope, not at all.
But there's physical evidence. You can just see it.
That's true. You can see it. If you've been out hiking or driving around the island, you may have noticed some of our waters have turned turquoise, like we're somewhere down south. But I did have a chat with DFO scientist Cynthia McKenzie to find out what's up. So what's happening off the coast? Why do our waters look like they're tropical?
The reason they look tropical is because it's a big phytoplankton bloom. And the bloom is a coccolithophore, which is a really small phytoplankton. It's about 5 microns or like 1,000th of a sand grain. And there are just so many of them out there that you could actually see it from space. And they're made out of calcium carbonate, and so that reflects light. And that's the reason we can actually see the turquoise color.
And so how many times has this happened in the past? This isn't the first time.
It happens periodically. Usually it happens on the south coast or off Grand Banks and stuff. This is actually, as far as I know, the first time it's actually been in the northern areas in Trinity Bay and Conception Bay and that sort of thing, and lasting for so long and so intense. So basically it forms offshore and then the winds bring it inshore and then it just sort of stays and is concentrated.
So what kinds of things have to happen for a bloom like this?
They really like a lot of light. Not all phytoplankton do, and so that's why they show up really well on satellite images, because satellite really only goes down to 5 meters or so, and so a lot of things like that, a regular bloom you would necessarily see.
So how long do they typically last?
Usually a few weeks. It really depends a lot on the wind, which direction the wind, you know, if we get a good offshore wind, it'll come out and it'll dissipate around and stuff. So it has a lot to do with the stability of the water column, it has a lot to do with the directions of the wind, and that sort of stuff. These are the samples that a colleague of mine brought in from Trinity Bay. They're in there, there's, you know, millions in there, you just can't see them because they're microscopic. They have these scales, and this is a camera view of what we see under the microscope. And so you have the cells here, and then around them you have these little scales, and the scales are what you see that are the calcium carbonate. And what happens when they die or fall apart, the scales remain, and they're still in the water column as well. And so you're not just seeing from the satellite image the cells that are alive, you're seeing all the scales that have ever been there for the last week or two, and it just gets more and more and more and more intense. So it may have been actually gone sooner than this. We hadn't had the real mixing from the hurricane. That maybe recreated a little bit more nutrients for them, so they could just continue on and on. So, but no, it's the nutrients when they run out of food. It's it.
That's a nice picture.
Yeah. Isn't that pretty neat to
Come
see that?
to Greece.
Yeah, exactly.
It's beautiful.
Don't have to go far to go to Greece, apparently.
So some of them shot near Holyrood.
Yeah.
And, but really, it's true. It looks fantastic.
It does. It looks great. Everybody has been commenting on it, so it's kind of nice to know exactly why it was happening.
Phytoplankton.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, the weather.
The weather. Let's chat about how temperatures were a little less than desirable today.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at that. 9 degrees in Twillingate, just barely reaching the double digits for Gander and Badger. Corner Brook only reached a high near 11 degrees as well. Now we can thank a northerly flow for that, and you can see those temperatures now are continuing to drop for the island. St. John's now down to 9 degrees, and again, it's those winds. So we are seeing those northwesterly winds now. St. John's gusting upwards of about 43 kilometers per hour. That will continue as we head through the night tonight. And then with that, as we do see with this northerly flow, we'll likely see some drizzle, especially along the northeast coast and then the northern portion of the Avalon as well. Now, otherwise, things should clear out tonight, and that's going to lead to a frost advisory. Those winds will be light for the west coast and parts of central, and once we start to see those clearing skies, those temperatures are going to dip, especially in low-lying areas, down into the single digits, potentially even the 0 degree mark. So patchy frost is certainly possible. Now, for the Avalon, we should stay in the mid-single digits, sitting around 6 degrees. Not in that warning because we'll stay cloudy for the most part in those windy conditions as well. Northerly winds will continue upwards of about 50 kilometers per hour. Grand Falls, Windsor, likely 0 degrees. Corner Brook 3, slight chance of some showers for Port aux Basques, but then those skies should clear as well. And then a clear but cool evening for most of Labrador. Again, 5 degrees for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Lab City down to 0. You'll see the chance of some showers in the next few hours, then that should clear out as well. But as we head through the day tomorrow, not a whole lot happening. This green is more than likely some cloud cover, but you might see a few spits of rain with that as well. Otherwise, we're looking at clear skies right across the board. It's going to feel very fall-like though, as we get into and continue with that northerly flow. So here's your temperatures. 11 degrees should top out as your daytime high in St. John's. Again, those winds northeasterly staying quite breezy for the Avalon and eastern Newfoundland, 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. Otherwise, those winds won't be too bad for the rest of the island. And you'll note those temperatures a little bit warmer as well. 16 degrees, 14 for Corner Brook. A little cool but sunny for Burgeo as well at 15 degrees. St. Anthony sitting at 14, and again those winds not quite bad at northwesterly, so 10 to 15 kilometers per hour. Up through Labrador, you're going to get back into those teens. A lovely day for Happy Valley, Goose Bay at 16 degrees, and Lab City sitting at 13. Might see the chance of a few showers in the first half of the day, but then you should see some clearing there as well. So as far as Saturday goes, that high pressure is moving in, which is why we're seeing clear skies tomorrow. So it should stay quite intact as we head through the day on Saturday. You're going to see a little bit of a temperature jump up as well. And then for the rest of the weekend, it's not too bad. So here's your temperatures on Sunday, 17 degrees. By the time next week rolls around, we will get into that chance of rain, and 12 degrees for Tuesday. Essentially the same forecast for central Newfoundland, but Tuesday it looks like those temperatures are really going to dip back down into those single digits. For western Newfoundland, 18 dipping down to 10. Look at that temperature Tuesday night, 0 degrees. Up through eastern Labrador though, as we continue through these teen temperatures by Sunday, we'll get back into that shower activity, continue into Tuesday. Your overnight lows in the single digits. And then we're looking at that for western Labrador as well, 13 degrees on Friday, and then rain right through Tuesday. So let's look at your forecast. We'll have a weather photo coming up a little later.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, if you're hitting the road and wondering about driving conditions, there's now an app for that. The provincial government has launched a new digital and phone service, this to keep residents and tourists up to date on some key travel information. It's a new NL 511 smartphone app. The website and the telephone number will provide information on things like winter driving conditions, construction updates, ferry status updates, and weather. The province plans to test it this weekend with that major highway detour near Avondale that Cecil Hare was telling us about this week on Here and Now. Users can customize the app to show specific features and get notifications on updates on the highways as you're using them.
Time you do a website or an app or even the phone line, there's always bugs, and I can assure you right now we're still going to have some bugs to work out. But one of the reasons we wanted to get it out early was we realized that one of the most valuable times for the new 511 service is certainly going to be our winter months. We go into winter operations on October the 17th, and by that time, you know, we hope to have as many of the bugs as possible out.
Well, what does almost $150 million get you? Well, if you're Grossmore National Park, it buys a lot of repair work to bridges, roads, campgrounds, as well as trails. Here now's Lindsay Bird reports.
It's always had natural beauty, but Grossmore now boasts some of the best pavement in the province. That's because the federal government has poured money into the park, $148 million since 2014. All of it spent on overhauling its infrastructure, from highways to bridges to passing lanes, work now reaching the end of the road.
It's really been a very fortuitous time for Grossmore National Park to be able to undertake a lot of that work, which ordinarily would be way beyond our internal resources to deal with.
The federal cash is part of a nationwide $3 billion spending plan for Parks Canada. Park staff say the updates, like these new campground washrooms at Greenpoint, were decades overdue.
A lot of our infrastructure was aging. We were dealing with a lot of deteriorating trails, conditions that we could not keep up with in terms of our regular work crews and our regular budgets.
Park staff say climate change is bringing bigger rainfalls to the park, and many of its trails have suffered erosion, like here at the base of Grossmore Mountain. Work now underway on it and two other of the park's most popular trails are meant to make them more sustainable in the face of uncertain weather.
that's what's putting water on the trail and causing that erosion that we have. So it's really important that we address this now. Otherwise, things which are bad now are just going to get much worse, and then we're going to get into situations where potentially losing the trails altogether.
Some of this cash is still yet to be spent. The campgrounds at Shallow Bay, Lomond, and Trout River are set to get a $2.6 million makeover, work that will only begin when the tourism season winds down. Lindsay Bird, CBC News, Grossmoor National Park.
Welcome back to Here and Now. We're going to head back to Little Bay now as excitement builds in the Chase the Ace fundraiser there. The Green Bay town is raising money for a new fire truck. Well, Chase the Ace there is now down to 8 cards with the next draw happening in just a couple of hours from now. The jackpot tonight, nearly 40,000 big ones. Here Now's Katie Breen is in Little Bay for us this evening.
All right, back in Little Bay at the beginning of the lineup, and I'm joined by who? What's your name?
Burl King.
Okay, what brings you out here tonight?
I don't know. I just follow Chase the Ace.
I hear that you've actually been on CBC for Chase the Ace.
Oh yes, twice before.
Anytime that there's an ace, you're after it.
I am.
Not only you, your 6 sisters too.
Yeah.
Seven sisters of us. We follow it all the time.
Where'd you come from?
Canning's Cove. Bonavista Bay.
Do you think you got a shot at the 40,000?
Of course we have. Why not? Just a good chance as anybody else.
How many tickets are you going to try and get?
Probably $40 worth.
$40?
For myself.
Yeah? How about you?
Probably 40.
So between the sisters, you guys are going to have a fair bit into this.
Few tickets, yeah. And we're also buying for our sisters that's not here.
Big money.
Oh yes.
What do you think of this idea of a fundraiser to try and get the community a new truck?
Well, I think it's great. It helps, fire departments, the churches, whatever. I like supporting churches and the fire departments.
Yeah? And you're going to keep chasing the ace?
I am.
Wherever it is?
Whatever.
Doesn't matter the cause?
No.
It's a day out for the sisters.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to you in here. So where'd you come from to get to here today?
I'm not going to answer that.
No? Is it a ways?
Not today, no. I've been here since, I'm going back on Saturday.
Have you been here for the ace
Last week,
before?
yes,
Yeah?
yeah.
What was the crowd like?
Oh, crazy. Like, I grew up here and I've never seen that many cars, ever. Yeah.
I heard getting out of town afterwards was a bit of a stretch.
My mama just lives up there, so it's good for me.
perfect.
So across the bridge.
Well, that's handy. You
Just
don't
like
have
the
anywhere to
troll.
go.
Like the troll, yeah.
So what do you think now of the old truck that they used to have?
Well, they need to replace it, there's no doubt,
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's an old, I don't know, I think it's an 80s or something, GM or Chevy or something. So
Yeah.
should be.
83.
83, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it should be replaced, absolutely.
Yeah. And do you think that there's a chance the A's could go tonight?
It's a pretty good chance. I mean, they're down to 8 cards, so it's getting pretty close.
Have you run into anyone being here like last week that you knew in childhood? Is it kind of like a reunion?
Yes, yeah, sort of, yeah. Cousins and this man here, just known him for years and just saw him now first time in years, 40 years probably, yeah.
And is this the door opening now?
This is the door opening.
Gotta go, I
See
guess.
you later, Canada.
Gotta go, I guess. When the tickets are open, the tickets are open. Anthony, back to you.
Welcome back to the program. Today is an important date in the Hindu calendar. It's called Ganesh Visarjan, marking the end of a 10-day celebration. And for Hindus across the world, this is one of the biggest carnivals. And for Hindu Newfoundlanders, it's a beach day.
It's the beach best known for rolling capelin and campfires. But on this day in early September, Middle Cove is bright with colors of Ganesha. Hindus from around the Avalon Peninsula are here on the beach to send off their beloved god. Music and prayers under the sunshine. Center stage on the rocks of Middle Cove sits the idol of Ganesha. But before the trip to the beach, there's this.
Everybody has one particular form.
At the Hindu temple in St. John's, the community gathers for special prayers.
We all get to celebrate Ganesha's birthday because Ganesh helps us a lot of times to get he helps us with our studies and stuff.
You don't get a Ganesha idol at Costco, you make them by hand.
I first started with the Play-Doh. So first time I tried with the hand. Then I had just imagined and then carved him simply. And then by year, I was just adding little details.
When Ganesha makes it to Middle Cove, that's not the end of the trip. Now comes the fun part. Ganesha is going for a swim. For the generations of Newfoundland Hindus, This dip in the ocean is a routine. But for some, it's the first time taking a polar bear dip.
So today, God is worshipped in a particular form called Ganesha. This one is meant to worship God as one who removes obstacles. People make an idol out of clay, and it is in the form of a humanoid body with an elephant's head. Once you make it, you invoke the Lord into that form. That invocation is your belief. You ask for forgiveness for any mistakes we have done, either in terms of worshiping the Lord or in general. You know, in life we go through many things, and then you release the invocation. We invoke the God into in that form, and then you release the invocation. And the God goes back into the universal form.
Middle Cove has been the scene of this celebration for about 50 years, making Ganesha a piece of Newfoundland culture and history. For Here and Now, I'm Prajvala Dikshit.
A great colorful story. If you dip in there, you're forgiven for anything. All right, throughout the show, you've been hearing about Little Bay and how the community is chasing the ace to replace their rickety old fire truck. Well, Here Now's Katie Breen is in the town today, and she spoke with the fire chief.
Hi, I'm Katie Breen, and I'm down in Little Bay, joined with Steve Walker, the fire chief down here, and I understand that you're the reason that all this Chase the Ace started.
Well, in some sense, yes. A small fire department like ours, we mainly run on fundraising. So we're always looking for different ideas on fundraising. And nearby community, St. Patrick's, tried one last year. So we said we'd try one this time.
But now they didn't get near as far as you. We're down to 8 cards, almost 40,000 in the jackpot?
It should be over 40,000 tonight. So, I mean, we never dreamed it'd go this far, but it's a lot of work, but it is well worth it in the end.
What can you do with the amount of money that you're going to raise here through all this?
Well, hopefully a truck is our main goal, but the equipment to go with the truck, along with like bunker gear, SCBAs, radios. I mean, we don't have any of that, so we'll use that money in purchasing new equipment.
Because I heard about the old truck.
Yeah.
You were back in, what was it, an 83 Chev pickup?
That's what we have for a fire truck, yeah. So since that, last year we got a truck from Hydro donated to us. So it took us about a year, again with fundraising, to get that one on the road and get it painted up. So in July, we put our old truck out on tenders. And now we're using the Hydro truck as our service truck.
What was it like when you did have that old one in service? Like, what kind of safety concerns did you have as fire chief?
Well, it was scary, whoever was driving it, because when you're called out to a fire, I mean, safety sort of goes out the window because you want to get there as fast as you can. And like, it was dangerous. You didn't know what was going to happen.
Now, this new pumper truck that you're hoping to get, that'll have water on the back so that you'll be able to, I guess, what will you be able to do with that?
Well, I mean, the thing about having water immediately, instead of, right now we got to hook up pumps. So that takes time to get pumps to a water source, get the hoses out, versus having a truck right alongside with water already in it.
Do you very often go to fires where there's no water source there?
Not yet. We've been lucky so far, but they're in St. Patrick's is our worst area, and the water is so far away from the main road.
Right.
So it takes time to get water up there.
So there's that risk there.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And hopefully now the money raised will help go towards a pumper truck to cut down that risk. And we're going to see how that's going to go now tonight.
Perfect.
We'll hopefully get more people.
Oh, looking forward to about 1,100.
That'll be good. All right, Anthony, back to you.
All right, our Katie Breen, I hope she remembered to get my ticket.
You might know where this is to if you were watching just a couple of minutes ago.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. Joan Barry sent us this photo. I'll confirm your suspicions coming up.
Well, from the turquoise story that you did earlier, you had kind of a bit of a tropical theme going tonight.
Apparently
right?
we do, yes.
I feel like beaches, you're in luck.
Yes, well, this is one of my favorite beaches that I've been to so far. I know that there are lots around, but
Oahu?
close to me, Oahu, that's a good one too. Yes, Middle Cove Beach, which you did just see featured in that story, but beautiful waves.
Gorgeous.
Joan Barry sent us that beautiful photo.
Yeah. Have you been out there for a bonfire yet?
I have, years ago.
Years ago?
Yeah,
really?
I haven't been since I moved here, but
Okay, one bonfire was enough?
no. I had to get back there. Just got to find time to do it.
I'll ask her about it after we go off the air. Details on Twitter.
Yeah,
it is a great picture. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much for sending that in. If you have any that you'd like to share with us, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Friday tomorrow already?
It is
Wow.
Friday. How did that happen?
I don't know. It is the 13th,
and it's
right?
the 13th,
Yeah.
and there's a full moon. I'll have details on that tomorrow.
Okay, let's hope nothing goes wrong. We'll see you tomorrow.
Good night.